kid in the candy store, put the leather on the denim. I ain't the cure, I'm the venom. If you wanna find me, find the taillight. Something's coming in, you're gonna wanna take a red eye. It's time to go. It's time to go. Get ready. Get ready. Get ready. Don't blink, don't blink. Get ready. Get ready. Get ready. Don't blink, don't blink.
Magandang araw po sa inyong lahat mga kabansa. Ito po inyong lingkod, Ado Paglinawan sa Katipunan channel. At ito po ang ating episode 223. Bakuna sa Pinas, Sinabotahe ng Kano. Ilan sana ang naligtas na Pinoy sa Covid-19? Ayan po mga kabansa. Ang tanong, dahil the Department of Defense po ng Estados Unidos is standing by a major disinformation campaign that worked to spread doubt and fears of Chinese COVID-19 vaccines in the Philippines in 2020. The expose was done by Reuters, isa pong reputable Western media newswire, and the investigation was published on June 14, the first report on the secret program. Ngayon, importante po ito mga kabansa dahil sa siguro 2 o 3 bagay. Unang-una po, parang nagsishift ang focus ng mga Amerikano ngayon. No? Nagsishift mula sa West Philippine Sea na tinatawag ng ating mga bobong, mga so-called pseudo-political analysts and geopoliticians na West Philippine Sea, wala namang West Philippine Sea. At ito ay lumilipat ngayon ang atensyon sa pagbabalik ng COVID dahil dito sa COVID flirt na bagong variant. Ayan po mga kabansa. At pangatlo, nagkakaroon po ng uncertainty ang Bongbong administration as of the present dahil sa isang recent incident that turned out to be a little violent dito sa Ayungin Shoal in connection with the regular resupply mission sa BRP Sierra Madre. No? Kaya ito pong involvement, no, nitong secret program na ito ng US military, setting up hundreds of fake social media accounts, spreading messages in Tagalog to the Filipino, mga kabansa, to the Filipino community that's spread doubt on the effectiveness of the protective measures and warned against any help from China. With the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic, the U.S. military, mga kabansa, launched its effort in the Philippines, creating more than 300 accounts, fake social accounts in the social media. Yan po yung isa sa nilabas nila, yung nasa inyong bandang kala na yan, yung inilabas nila, at halatang hindi Pilipino ang may gawa. Ang kanila ay hashtag China ang virus. Gusto mo yun? Ibig sabihin, gusto mo yun? Gusto mo yun? China, galing COVID, tapos China, galing bakuna. So, hindi maganda ho yung pagkalatag nito. No? At yan, Pakinggan natin ang ating introductory video.
Amerika ang COVID vaccine na made in China. Sa social media raw pinapakalat ang paninira at gumagamit pa ng taglish na hashtags. Nasa frontline na balitang yan si Naligtas.
Isa ka ba sa mga naturukan ng bakunang Sinovac kontra Covid-19 noong pandemya? May inilabas na investigative report ang news agency na Reuters kung saan sinasabing nagkaroon ng sikretong kampanya ang Amerika para siraan ang Sinovac vaccine dito sa Pilipinas. Ang bakunang Sinovac ay made in China. Base sa report, layo ng kampanya na kontrahin ang lumalagong impluwensya ng China sa ating bansa. Nagpakalat daw ng maling impormasyon ang militar ng Amerika sa online platform na X gamit ang nasa 300 accounts. Nagsimula umano ang kampanya noong 2020 na sumentro sa Tagalog-English slogan na hashtag China ang virus. Agad namang nagkomento ang China. Ayon sa kanilang foreign ministry, matagal na nilang pinatutunayang minamanipula ng Amerika ang social media para magpakalat ng maling impormasyon, gayon din para impluwensyahan ang opinyon ng publiko tungkol sa ibang bansa. Palagi na raw itong ginagawa ng Amerika at kontra raw ang China rito. Ayon naman sa ating Department of Health, dapat imbestigahan ang umano'y sikretong kampanya ng Amerika tungkol sa Sinovac. Ayon kay Health Assistant Secretary Albert Domingo, dapat masilip ng mga otoridad ang inilabas na impormasyon ng Reuters.
Ito po ang mag-i-explain mga kabansa kung bakit despite the deliberate and strict nationwide lockdowns nung panahon ng Pangulong Duterte enforced by the Philippine government, the Philippine Interagency Task Force on Emerging Infectious Diseases was baffled by the sudden drop of vaccination rates just as the infection cases hit 1.3 million. Na meron pa pong 40% na ayaw magpabakuna, showing hesitancy sa targeted 70 million out of 115 million na population natin. Ang tina-target ay 70 lamang. So, yung remaining 40% po na yan ay 28 million people. Which is the projected level. Yan pong 20 million, pag yan ay na-achieve, dyan po mag-flatten out, no? Mag-disintegrate yung virus pag na-abot yung 70 million. At that juncture, yan pong hindi pa nababakunahan o ulitin natin, ay 28 million. When the final result came out, the country suffered heavily from the pandemic with over 4.1 reported cases and 66,864 deaths from the virus. So, ayan po ang mga givens, yan ang mga figures. No? So, what this means is that as the vaccination rate hit 60% of the target, 1.3 million, biruin nyo, 60%. Kung yan ay nagtuloy-tuloy, piski doblehin nyo pa, 2.6 million magkaroon ng cases. No? Pero hindi. Filipinos already contracted the disease. Because of the vaccine hesitancy and vaccination delay in completing the balance of 40%, a higher rate of infection awaited the 2.8 million dahil ito pong virus ay nag-mutate. No? Ito po, pag hindi napigilan by way of vaccination, ay mag-mutate and it will infect geometrically. Simplistically po, makikita nyo sa baba, no? May mga ginawang drawing dyan ang mga scientists. No? Kung yung pong, yung itim, kung yung 60 ay kaagad na bakunahan yung 40%, ang trend po ng ating cases will only be relying on the black line. Pero ang nangyari po, dahil na-delay yung vaccination ng minority 40%. Ayan, no? Kukalkulate natin kung gaanong kataas ika nga complicate. So balik po tayo. Kung natuloy lamang sa rate of 60% at 1.3 cases, ang proportion po niyan mathematically ay yung remaining 40% will only infect 860,000 additional cases. But sabi ko nga kanina, geometric po ang takbo ng virus, no? Hindi 1 plus 1, kundi kuminsan ay 1 times 1, 1 times 2, 1 times 3. Even if we double the rate of 860,000 at normal proportions, babagsak pa rin po yan ng 1.7 million more. About 900,000 more will be infected. Ito po ay, of course, conjecture, no? We are only trying to create a mathematical explanation. Diyos lamang ang nakakaalam how many of the remaining 1.1 million cases could have been prevented, no? At the rate of 16% per case, hindi na kabansa napigilan yung 1.1 million complication. So, ang wild guess kung ilan ang minimum na naapektuhan dahil sa delay at dahil sa black propaganda na yan ng US military, ine-estimate natin, no? And I would like to properly identify it as a conjecture, no? Is that when the final result came out, ano ang lumabas? 4.1. So minus natin yung 1.3 at 60%, may balance na 2.8 on a straight line method. But geometrically, we say we factor double. So 2.8 minus 1.7, 1.1. Ito po ang assume na maililigtas pa. At sa 16%, how will this translate into human lives? 17,600 Filipinos could have been saved. At least, no? Babawas po yan doon sa 66,864 deaths from the virus. Kayo pong nakikinig, mga kabansa. Kayo pong nakikinig. Kayo ba'y namatayan dahil sa COVID-19? Hindi na natin masisigurado kung wala po yung propaganda na yan ng Amerikano, ng American military, kung may save pa ang inyong mahal sa buhay. But he could have been at 17,600 at least, no? I would estimate that is from 17,600 to gawin mo ng doble, 34,000. So, ilan lamang, mga kabansa? At posible ho yan. I will prove it later at the end of this presentation na posible po yan. No? Na mangyari yan na hindi 66,000 ang mamamatay na Pilipino. Pero dahil, balik tayo dito, the problem now is that there was a premeditated human intervention. Ibalik natin doon sa slide ng time and motion. Kaya kita niyo yung pula, dahil ho na delay, ayun, no? Dahil na delay sa bandang gitna, tumaas ang incidence ng kaso. So, ayan mga kabansa ang ating conjecture. Hindi natin sinasabi na yan ay statistically accurate. No, we are just... So, Ano ang pumigil? Kasi kung walang pumigil, mga kabansa, dito sa epekto, kung walang kumontra dito sa epekto ng propaganda na ito, ay baka worse pa sa 66,864 ang namatay na Pilipino. Ito po, had the American disinformation not deterred the vaccination from its launch, many more lives could have been saved. It was the timely intervention by President Rodrigo Duterte threatening to arrest those who resisted vaccination that reversed the situation. Otherwise, many more could have contracted the virus, and death toll at the rate of 16% in the Philippine situation. Ayan. So what caused this? The fake accounts amassed thousands of followers, and as 2020 continued, became specifically focused on the anti-vaccination messages. Curiously, the propaganda targeted and focused on the Chinese-produced Sinovac. Ito po ang ating dating Pangulo sa kanyang maisog na ginawa.
Don't get me wrong. There is a crisis being faced in this country. There is a national emergency. Kung ayaw mo magpabakuna, ipa-aresto kita. Pero kung hindi kayo magpabakuna, umalis kayo sa Pilipinas. Go to India if you want, to somewhere, to America. But for as long as you are here and you are a human being.
Itong sabotahe pong ito ay nagsimula under former President Donald Trump and continued into the early months of the President Joe Biden's administration. At ito po, mga kabansa, ang kalunos-lunos. The U.S. Department of Defense does not deny the Reuters report. Kaya ako yung nagtataka dito kay Charlie Galvez. Ang reaction niya, of course, initial reaction pa lang yun, mga kabansa. Hindi raw siya naniniwala na nagkaroon ng secret operation. Inaamin na po ng Pentagon. Anyway, ang spokesperson po ng Pentagon na si Lisa Lawrence ay nagsabi, no? The department conducts operations in the information environment to counter adversary malign influence. Several state and non-state actors use social media platforms and other media to spread disinformation and conduct malign influence campaigns against the United States. Ang tanong ko dyan, kung kayo ng China ay nagkakagulo, at totoo ito sinasabi ninyo na kayo sinusubo ng China, bakit naman kami, mga Pilipino, ay idadamay ninyo sa inyong sigalot? Anyway, mag-iimbestiga raw po si Ginang Aimee Marcos. Ito po ang kanyang statement.
A lawmaker will launch an investigation into the alleged anti-vaccine campaign of the United States to undermine China at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. Senator Aimee Marcos, who chairs the Senate Committee on Foreign Relations, says there is a need to get to the bottom of the issue, citing the vaccine hesitancy of Filipinos during the pandemic. She calls on the Department of Health, or DOH, to cooperate with the Senate probe. Expected to be invited are former health and security officials. The Senate hearing will be conducted on June 24, 2024. An investigative report published by Reuters alleged that the U.S. military ran a secret campaign to discredit China's vaccine Sinovac, with the Filipino public as one of its target.
Ang problema, yung buhay naman ng Pilipino ang linustay dahil hindi gusto magpabaksin sa Sinovac. Pambira naman. Kaya aalamin natin sa lalong madaling panahon, sana makakuha tayo ng testigo dahil napakahirap nga hanapin itong mga ebidensya ito.
Ayan. Ang dapat imbestigahan dyan ay itong schedule na ating papakita sa inyo. Alam po ninyo, noong December 2019, nag-report ng outbreak sa Wuhan province. In a few days, na-identify kagad ng Chinese health authorities at ng World Health Organization. In-announce nila ang discovery ng novel coronavirus known as 2019 nCoV at pinangalanan nila itong Covid-19. Nagsimula po ang black propaganda sa Pilipinas noong March 2020, ang US secret operation. Bakit, mga kabansa? Klarong-klaro po sa schedule na ina-anticipate nila nangakos through Babes Romualdez na ating Philippine Embassy in conspiracy with Teddy Boy Locsin, our Secretary of Foreign Affairs. No? Na-announce nila, darating daw yung bakuna rito ng December 2020. Ayan, promise arrival of US vaccine. Pero nagkaroon ho ng early decision na babakunahan muna ang mga Amerikano sa loob ng Estados Unidos bago ilabas ang bakuna ng Amerika na Pfizer at Moderna. So, ang nangyari, maglo-launch na po tayo noong March 1 ng Philippine Vaccination Program, wala pa ang Pfizer at Moderna. So, ano ang dumating? Arrival of 600,000 Sinovac vials from China. Unlimited supplies of certain vaccines from the United Kingdom. O dito nyo mahahalata na may underhanded tactics dahil as of March 6, 2021, mga kabansa, ayaw na mga local health workers natin. Ayan o. Ayaw nilang Sinovac. Ayaw nilang magpabakuna sa Sinovac, mga kabansa. Our very own health workers. Ano ibig sabihin niya? That they were fed information, mga kabansa, na questionable yung Sinovac vaccines. Intriga, mga kabansa, napasukan. So, ganong hindi makaka-launch before the Chinese vaccines arrive in the Philippines, they had to delay the market para sa kanila kumuha ng bakuna later on. Para umabot yung supply nila. O ayan, kailan sila dumating, mga kabansa. Naunahan pa sila by 9 days nung first rollout ng Sputnik 5 from Russia. Dahil dumating ang Pfizer May 12 na at ang Moderna June 2. Yan po ang meditation. Yan po ang, not meditation, yan po ang motivation to delay the rollouts from other countries. Well, anyway, hindi ko sasabihin masama yan. Pero ano ang lumalabas ngayon sa mga bansa na mas maraming naturukan sa Pfizer at saka Moderna at saka dyan sa AstraZeneca. Aba, kayo na magsabi sa akin dahil hindi ko naman yung topic ngayon. Saka na natin tatalakayin yan. Marami ba nagre-reklamo laban sa kanila? At yung nag-start na kampanyang secret noong March 2020 ay natapos more than a year afterwards in the middle of 2021. So, the campaign went for about 15 months. Yan. At sabi ni Sas Rogando Sasot, it's genocide. It's genocide according to the 1948 Convention on the Prevention of the Punishment of the Crime of Genocide by the United Nations, because in Article 2, genocide is defined any of the following acts committed with intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group as such, diretso na tayo, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part. So yan po mga kabansa. We will take this up with our international lawyers in New York and Washington, D.C. And just like we have filed as of yesterday or the other day, a petition to investigate the Philippine National Police abusive force in the issuance of warrant of arrest kay Pastor Kibuloy sa KOJC locations, 3 lokasyon, sa Davao at pangatlo sa Sarangani, na ipadala na po namin yung letter tungkol doon. Isusunod po natin ang reklamo tungkol dito sa United Nations. Si Sas Rogando Sasot po ay isang international studies expert. She is recommending the filing of a class suit. But despite this, the U.S. military is behaving with impunity. Baliwala sa kanila. Sila nag-aaway ng China. Kung ano man ang problema nila, hindi kanila na lang. Bakit tayo gagawin mga guinea pigs dito? At more than sa ating estimate, ang ating informal estimate was 17,600 lives could have been saved. Dugtong ni Lisa Lawrence. To counter those malign influence attacks aimed at U.S. allies and partners. What annoys me is this loaded statement. As it relates to COVID-19 disinformation, China in 2020 initiated a disinformation campaign to falsely blame the United States for the spread of COVID-19. Let us show the slide. Ito po is a flat lie. Kung makikita nyo rin sa kaliwa, segundo sa mga schedule na pinakita namin earlier, ito po ay nangyari noong March 7, 2020. Just in time for the launch. So hindi nila masasabi that they were reacting to something. No. This was their initiative. The date of the South China Morning Post na nasa kaliwa was March 7, 2020. Ang sino ang nagsimula nito? The U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, who switched the disease name from COVID-19 to Wuhan virus as it spread in the U.S. Tingnan yung mga ugali ng mga yan na nagpapanggap ng mga kaibigan daw natin. Sus Maria Jose, initsa ni Pompeo ang bola, sinalo naman ni President Trump. The US and China appeared headed towards a fresh row. Sabi noong March 20, 13 days after Pompeo did the Wuhan virus. At sa pangalawang araw, ginawa niya Inignore niya ang pleas from Beijing to keep it science-based. Ang China was pleading, huwag natin politicizing itong virus. Ha? Ang mga World Health official was saying, let us all talk science here. Let us all talk technology here. Huwag niyong gamitin sa sarili niyong advantage that could incite racial discrimination. Pompeo's nomenclature for the virus coincided with the rising tide of criticism that President Donald Trump's administration was facing over its response to the community transmission of the virus in the United States. Bakit? Dahil nakikita nila China and some countries that were locking down. Nagkakaroon ng lockouts at saka lockdowns. And in China, to the point, of course, there was limitation of human movement and human freedom. Pero para sa kaligtasan ng mga sangkatauhan, sa China nga, pag ikaw ay makulit, ikakandado nila yung gate mo. At hindi nila ibibigay sa iyo ang susi kung ikaw ay labas ng labas. No? Kaya nga, China nag-invento pa nung, if you remember mga kabansa, nung hindi ba, yung mga unang robot na nagdi-deliver, no? Parang Lazada, Grab at kung ano dyan. Pero walang tao. Pero, eto po, ang close-up. Ewan ko kung may close-up mo itong nasa kanan na bear. Ang close-up nitong president, ay dito po, nag-i-speech si President Trump, pero kitang-kita sa kuha ni Jabin Botsforth, isang photojournalist, no? Na krinost out niya yung corona virus at nilagay niya mismo, ayan, huling-huli ang presidente ng Estados Unidos. Nilagyan niya ng Chinese virus as he speaks with his coronavirus task force sa White House noong March 20, 2020. Ito po ang mga klase ng tao that we are dealing with. And even if it's now the time of President Biden, can we safely say, mga kabansa, that they are truly our friends? Well, anyway, let us back down for the minute and go into this report ng mismong Reuters author na in-interview ng Democracy Now! Pakinggan natin ito.
Investigation by Reuters has revealed the U.S. military ran a secret anti-vaccination campaign at the height of the pandemic in the Philippines and other nations in an effort to sow doubt about COVID vaccines made by China. The clandestine Pentagon campaign began in 2020 under Donald Trump and continued into mid-2021 after President Biden took office. The Pentagon set up numerous fake social media accounts on multiple platforms to target audiences in the Philippines, Central Asia, and the Middle East. The campaign also aimed to discredit masks and test kits made in China. According to Reuters, the secret operation was launched to counter what it perceived as China's growing influence in the Philippines and other countries. One senior military officer involved in the campaign told Reuters, "We weren't looking at this from a public health perspective. We were looking at how we could drag China through the mud," they said. For more, we're joined by the reporter who broke the story. Joel Sheckman is an award-winning investigative journalist who's written for Reuters and the Wall Street Journal on national security, intelligence, and cyber espionage. His recent Reuters piece is headlined, "Pentagon ran secret anti-vax campaign to undermine China during the pandemic." Joining us now from Washington, D.C., Joel, thanks so much for being with us. Lay out your major findings. I mean, this is just explosive, what you have discovered.
all of this starts to play out in the Philippines, which is a country that traditionally was a very close U.S. ally, right? And traditionally, it's a very close U.S. ally, but had started to move away under President Duterte, had started to move away from the United States and started to move towards China anyway. And then the pandemic breaks out, and Duterte cuts this deal with China that it's going to be the first in line for China's vaccine that's under development. And at the same time, Duterte says, okay, I'm going to also get rid of these old U.S. military agreements that we have. They're no longer relevant. And so within the Pentagon, within Washington, there was this fear that they were going to lose the Philippines, so to speak. And so they launched this secret propaganda campaign in the Philippines and elsewhere in Southeast Asia to try to denigrate China's vaccine. And what made it particularly controversial, I think, or controversial now, right, to look back at it in hindsight, is that it's not that the U.S. was secretly, not just that the U.S. was secretly denigrating a vaccine at the height of the COVID pandemic, which by itself is kind of problematic, but it was doing this at a time that no other vaccine was going to be available in the foreseeable future, right? Like the United States' vaccines did not become widely available in the Philippines for like 10 months, for 10 months after they got the Chinese one. So the Chinese one was really the only game in town in the Philippines for like almost the first year of, for almost an entire year. And so, you have Sinovac, which is really the only one that most Filipinos were able to access. And the Pentagon was using these kind of secret social media accounts on Twitter and Facebook to say that this vaccine was harmful, that it was dangerous, that it was at least ineffective, and that China caused the virus to start with. So, ergo, how can you trust any vaccine that comes out of the country that created the virus itself, right? And they were using these kind of fake accounts that sort of purported to be Filipinos and trying to really stir up this message that, what's your track record with Chinese products, right? Like they're all fake, right? What have you seen in your own life? You've seen that Chinese products are fake. How can you trust a country that always creates fake products to make a real vaccine? The vaccines are going to be fake too.
This is extremely significant given how many people died in the Philippines of COVID without taking the vaccine. I mean, you have that quote in your piece. We weren't looking at this from a public health perspective. We were looking at how we could drag China through the mud, said one senior military officer. How many people died in the Philippines?
Yeah, so I'm trying to remember, like by the end of COVID, how many people passed away, but it was, you're talking about a number that reached it far past the tens of thousands, right? And there's no question, it's very hard to measure like the efficacy of a secret campaign like this and say, okay, how much did it move the needle? But I think if we judged it by its intentions, right? Like the intention was to make people hesitant to take Sinovac. There's no question that to the degree that was successful is incredibly harmful. There's all kinds of public health research in the Philippines that shows that vaccine hesitancy, specifically towards the Chinese vaccines, led to a large number of deaths because, again, that was the only vaccine that was available for, from like February 2021 almost till early 2022. It wasn't the only one, but it was almost the only one, right? Like it was the only one you could reliably get at that point in the country. And the fact that people were so afraid of taking that because of their history of sort of suspicion towards China really had like a very adverse impact. Now, it's hard to say exactly how much the Pentagon throwing fuel on that fire, like how much of an impact that had. But if you judge it by its intentions, to whatever degree they were successful at their intentions, it was incredibly harmful.
Well, after that long video na very informative dahil maraming shots po kinuha from the Philippines, ito lamang ay nagpapatunay na kaagibat ninyo ako dito sa concern dito. Dahil hindi po biro na baka sumobra nga ng round off ko na sa 18,000 ang namatay dito sa Pilipinas dahil lamang dito sa propaganda nito. Yung po lamang ang aking personal estimate. Pero alam niyo po nung lockdown, ako po ay nakakulong sa tinitirhan ko sa Quezon City, dyan sa may Bago Bantay. Wala po akong magawa kundi mag-research. Kaya ito po ay highly recommended ko sa inyo. Itong libro ko na ito, mga kabansa. Bakit? I-super natin yung slide. Dahil ito po sinulat ko hindi purely from the medical viewpoint or the vaccine versus the non-vaccine debate, but from the viewpoint of geopolitical implications based on our relationship with the United States and China. Number two, because of the vaccination competitive markets. Number three, gumawa po ako ng hypothesis ko mismo, my own thesis, regarding the probable traces of origins kung saan nagsimula yan. And ano ang mga interplaying information wars at saka yung paggamit ng batas, yung lawfare that is involved in the debate dito. At gumawa rin ako ng prognosis kung ano mangyayari, ano dapat gawin ng isang responsive government after the pandemic. Ito po ino-offer lamang ng aking publisher at ako up to June 30, 2024 sa presyong nakalatag dyan sa harapan ninyo sa Metro Manila 799, sa Provincial 899 dahil po sa courier service, no? Halos wala na akong courier service sa Maynila, no? Hindi rin namin kayo pinapatungan. Just text 0917 336 4366. Ayan po mga kabansa. At dito po, sa librong ito, nilahad ko ang chronology in reverse ng origins of COVID-19. Nung pong sinabi ko na kanina na noong January 9, 2020, na-identify ho kaagad ng mga Chinese health authorities at saka ng World Health Organization kung ano itong virus na ito'y binigyan ng pangalan. Noong December 2019, in-announce na po ng China formally ang outbreak sa Wuhan, Hubei province. Mga kabansa. But that does not show na sa Wuhan nagsimula ang virus na yan. No? Dahil noong pong November 2019 ay meron ang nakakontract. Si Mayor Michael Melham nagkasakit. Siya po ay mayor ng Belleville sa New Jersey. No? After he left and attended a League of Municipalities conference in the New Atlantic City, he tested positive for coronavirus antibodies. Bukod po dyan, at ito ang naging super spreader. No? October 18 to 27, a period of almost 9 days. No? Traveling in at 18 and traveling out at 27, so minus 2 days, 1 week lang po yan, 7 days. Of about 300 athletes from the United States participated in the World Military Games in Wuhan. No? Marami pong naging bisita ang Wuhan noong 3 months before the outbreak. Ang duda po dito sa Estados Unidos ay more than 300 ang kanilang mga athletes, pero 57 lamang ang nag-perform in actual games. hindi ho ba pagka-participate ang US, usually nasa top 3 yan, nasa top 5? Eh dito po, sila halos nasa ilalim. Dahil they garnered only walang gold, 3 silver lamang and 5 bronze medals. Dahil marami po sa delegasyon ang nag-report na sila ay may sickness of flu-like and intestinal symptoms. Now, it takes an average of 10 days for the coronavirus to gestate in a human body. Which means, mga kabansa, na bago pa man sila dumating dyan sa Wuhan, meron na silang dalang hindi kanais-nais. Ito po, para makita nyo ang magnitude kung bakit naging super spreader ito sa Wuhan. Papakitaan namin kayo kung anong nangyayari sa Wuhan. Kasi kung hindi namin ito papakita, hindi nyo mag-grasp ang message namin. Ito po ang video sa Wuhan, Hubei Province.
Canada. Cape Verde. Colombia. Republic of the Congo. Croatia. China.
O nakita niyo mga kabansa kung gaano karaming tao meron doon? Ha? Oh, eh kung meron ng virus sa China at that time, oh my God, baka right there and then, sa stadium na yun, nagtutumbahan na ang mga tao. But the theory is, dala ng mga Amerikano, about 300 of them, kaya 57 lang nakapaglaro. Oh, tuloy pa natin itong chart. 1 month before the games, no? 1 month before the games, in September 2019, Japanese tourist na nagpunta sa Hawaii, mga kabansa. Alam niyo, may malaking base sa Hawaii, nandiyan ang Pearl Harbor. Kung saan mayroong military base is in question. Bumalik ko sila sa Japan with similar severe respiratory symptoms. Pero pinaka-glaring, in July 15, 2019, the U.S. Center for Disease Control issued a cease and order enforcing the closure of Fort Detrick in Frederick, Maryland. The 399-acre military proving ground is home for the U.S. Army Medical Research Institute of Infectious Diseases. Diyan ho sa Fort Detrick nila ginagawa yung mga may gain of function, yung pong mga mikrobyo na ginagawa nila for chemical and biological warfare. Ay nagkaroon din po ng leakage dyan. Pero saan ang first suspicious outbreak? Nangyari po ito noong June 30, 2019. 7 months before the outbreak in December, end of December of 2019 sa Wuhan, China. The first day of outbreak at the Green Spring Retirement Village in Springfield, Virginia, with 54 taken to the hospital. Ano ang summary nito na nangyari sa state of Virginia? Alam nyo, state of Virginia is where the Pentagon is. No? Andyan po yan sa Arlington, Virginia, ang Pentagon City. July 11, 2019, ano nangyari? Yung dalawa sa dinala sa ospital na matay and 18 more pinasok na hospitalized. Another 4 days, pangatlo na matay, 23 more hospitalized and a dozen fell ill. Sa buong Virginia, ano ang sinabi as of October? Na nagkakaroon ng World Military Games sa Wuhan, China. Virginia's statewide reporting system had counted 19 outbreaks within the state, including 13 at long-term care facilities like Green Spring, mga kabansa. Ang paboritong atakihin ay ang mga senior citizens. So sinasabi ng Amerika, meron daw lab leak sa Wuhan. Hindi po totoo yan. The allegation that the coronavirus SARS-CoV-2 was caused by a laboratory leak in Wuhan has also been dismissed, not only once, but twice by the World Health Organization. Kaya po nagkalit ang Amerika sa World Health Organization, tatandaan nyo? Nag-resign sila, nag-quit sila sa WHO. My God! Sabi nga ng China, hayaan nyo, kung kukulain kayo sa pera, bigyan namin kayo. Pangalawa, that the virus was transferred zoonotically from animal to animal or from animal to human, dahil animal din ho ang human. Sa Wuhan daw na i-transfer has also been debunked by the WHO. Besides, kung sasabihin nila na mayroong nangyari sa Wuhan, it does not distinguish the culpability of the U.S. by the fact, mga kabansa, that the Wuhan Institute of Virology was federally funded and operated by the Americans through the National Institute of Health until Trump ordered the suspension of support budgeted at over 3 million after an initial release of 600,000. So nung nalaman ni Trump, tinigil niya sa 600,000. This notwithstanding, in June 2023, last year lang po ito, U.S. intelligence agencies found no direct evidence that COVID-19 pandemic stemmed from an incident at Wuhan. The most logical explanation, therefore, is that COVID-19 was transferred to Wuhan through not zoonotics, but anthroponosis during the World Military Games from the U.S. mga kabansa. So ano ang naging final cost ng pandemic in terms of the US, China, the world, and the Philippines? Sa atin po, may population tayo ng 115 million, 4.1 million ang nagkaroon ng sakit, 66,864. Out of which we are theorizing that 18,000 could have been saved had it not been for the sabotage of the vaccination system by the US military. If it did emanate from China and Sinovac was not effective, why was the effect so catastrophic sa US? US po ang pinaka-hard hit ng pandemic na yan. Sa kanilang population of 333 million, one-third nagkasakit. 112 million nagkasakit. And about 10.37% ang namatay. 1.2 million ang namatay po sa US. Sila ang number one. Hard hit. Kung talagang magaling ang Pfizer nyo at yung Moderna ninyo, why is your statistics? Compare nyo sa China. Oh, inaakusahan nyo ang China na violating human rights of movement. 1.4 billion ang population ng China. Wala pang 1 milyon ang nagkasakit sa China. At saka wala pang 6,000 ang namatay sa China. Oh, ito ho ibig sabihin eh. So kaninong vaccine ang effective? Yung pong vaccine ng Amerika, kung saan lampas sa 1 milyon ang namatay? O itong vaccine ng China na mga 5,000 lamang ang namatay. At mabuti na lamang marami tayong nakuha at kakaunti comparatively to the world population. Dahil sa buong mundo po, with a population of 8 billion people, 704 million ang nagkasakit at 7 million ang namatay. Karamihan po sa 7 million na yan ay Amerikano. Ayan mga kabansa. May oras pa ba tayo? Okay. No? Tugtog na natin itong last video natin.
Your piece concludes by noting that General Dynamics IT, which worked on the anti-vax campaign, just won a contract worth almost $500 million, $500 million, to, quote, continue providing clandestine influence services for the military. Explain.
Yeah, so General Dynamics, there's a lot of different aspects of these psychological operations, right? Because it's not just online, but for the online part of it, General Dynamics was responsible for the largest Pentagon contract that was involved in this kind of anti-vaccine kind of COVID propaganda. They were the ones that were kind of running the accounts. They were their subcontractors, I should say, were running the accounts, running the propaganda during that period, and they actually got into a lot of hot water. Not so much just because of the kind of moral elements of this or the ethical elements that we're discussing, but more because they really got caught, right? Like the accounts were discovered by the social media companies, like the tradecraft they used to disguise themselves was very poor, and so they got into a lot of trouble. And people in that world were kind of shocked on that basis for why they would get another contract so soon after to do the same thing, when they were discovered, kind of repeatedly and called out repeatedly, just like a year ago or 2 years ago. So, going forward, my understanding is that they're going to continue to be the prime or the main contractor behind this kind of clandestine online kind of propaganda operations.
Okay, Christopher Cruz, maraming kalokohan nangyari sa pandemic na ito. Pakisama natin ang mga excess death o namatay sa mRNA vax. mRNA po yung Pfizer at Moderna. Yan po ang isang hearing na ginagawa ni Congressman Dan Fernandez at Amy Marcos. Mas gusto pa nilang pag-usapan yung Reuters expose kuno kaysa dyan sa nadali ng mRNA vax nila. Hindi naman po, sasali na po kaya dyan. Consider it as an additional awareness. Fernando Rosales, bago yang may event 201, si Bill Gates about pandemic. Verdan AF, Kano, please tell the title of your intro music. Get ready. Wala po yan sa original po yan. Kano, nakabili na ako ng libro yung No Vaccine for a Virus Called Racism. May mga pages na hindi na proofread. Of course. Mamadali po tayo. Marvin Cruz, naniniwala pala kayo na may COVID virus. Well, with 66,000 na namatay, yan po ang corpus delicti na isasubmit ko sa iyo, Ginoong Marvin. Robert Maxales, ang virus ay germs. Rodolfo Garcia, tapos na yan. Pag-usapan dapat yung ginagawa ng China Coast Guard sa mga Pinoy Coast Guard. Misunderstanding daw, Mr. Garcia, hindi ba? Di tanongin niyo si Bongbong Marcos tungkol dyan. Bakit si Bersamin ang inaharap niya sa atin? Sino ba yung Bersamin na yan? At saka Centino na yan. Amic TV45 UK, waving face, red heart shape, watching Alan DPH with prayers. Queen C, hello po Sir Ado. Joe Biderio, hello po, mabuhay po, watching from Jeddah. Fernando Morales present, Mrs. Mommy, waving hand. Osman Mohammed Zim, good afternoon. Just remember what Scott Ritter said. We are not your friend. Quincy, malaki kinalaman ng trade war ng US at China noon. When Trump increases tariff on China's products coming from the US before and during the pandemic as US retaliation to China, until now, no concrete evidence na sa Wuhan Institute nagsimula ang COVID-19. Total disinformation talaga ang US na yan. Kaya more than 1 million na namatay sa US sa kagagawa nila. Mahilig silang gumawa ng conspiracy theory. RAM! Grabe! Ang mga panglinlang nila sa utak ng mga Pilipino. Shin Yisheng, good afternoon, Kano. I hope I pronounce your name properly. Miss Anthrope, good afternoon, Maestro. At mga kabansa, Cancer Leo, Harvard Institute of Socio-Political Progression said the Filipinos was first among the most gullible races. No wonder why tuloy lang ang panguto ng mga Kano sa bansang ito. Andres Teves, magandang hapon po Kano, watching from Orani, Bataan. Katipo 96, greetings po Kano. Alice Maestro, desperado ang America led by financial oligarchs. Gusto nilang pabidar makuha ang loob ng Pilipino. Kaya gumawa sila ng paraan. AstraZeneca, Pfizer, Moderna, they represent the big corporate interests of the financial oligarchs in Wall Street in New York City. Sadly, many people do not realize they're scared of Sinovac and Sputnik, but they don't feel scared of getting robbed by global oligarchs who run in the big pharma corporation. Yi Xinyan was inoculated with Sinovac initial 2 doses, but had Pfizer for booster. Always careful, but after that, I had COVID. Don't know, it was just a sad coincidence. Ako, sorry na lang. Leo Pogi, ang dami ng COVID. Maraming Pinoy, bilib pati, sa Kano, pati mainstream media, lab ang Kano. Hindi po lang nila lab, kasosyo po nila yan. No? Sana gumising na mga Pinoy, fanatic sa Kano. Kimi and Dayaptung, walang virus kung yung weapon at inulupong ang sino nung panahon na nagdemand na ipasa sa EUA for 50% effectiveness sa China virus. Ang pinakauna na Sinopharm at Sinovac ang hindi pa na bioweapon na direct mismo galing sa CHS. Ang ikinamatay noong kasagsagan ay hindi COVID-19, kundi ventilated with remdesivir to death. Ayun, para patunayan ni Ulupong. At hindi sila nag-release ng safe at effective kuno, literal at patayan kung sino ayaw sa kanila. Alright, mga kabansa. Wala na tayong panahon. Magpapaalam na ako sa inyo. Pero before that, ito po ang iniwang message sa atin ni Ginoong Martin Luther King. A nation that continues year after year to spend more money on military defense than on programs of social uplift is approaching spiritual doom. Maraming salamat po sa inyong pagtangkilik. Ito po ang Maestro, nagpapaalam na. I-share lamang po ninyo kami at i-viral para mas marami pang makaalam ng katotohanan. Thank you and good day.
You're gonna wanna take a red eye. It's time to go. It's time to go.